What's up, guys? It's Mike from True Business Review back today. June 1st, start of a new month, also the start of a new series. So, you might have already seen Dan's prediction videos, but obviously, we're co-running this channel, but we have different opinions. So, I am starting all 32 teams. I will be predicting every single one of their records. I spent 3 painstaking hours predicting every single team's schedule. If one team won the game, another team lost the game, and I kept it consistent. So here comes the start of a new series. I'm not really sure what pattern I'm going to do it. I'm thinking of doing it. Just going to start off with divisions. So like if I'm predicting the Cowboys today, which I am, then I'll do the Giants next and the Eagles, Redskins, and then switch divisions. But if you guys have any teams in particular you're looking forward to, drop it down below. So let's get right into things. Today I am predicting the Dallas Cowboys 2020 schedule record. So just to start things off, let's look at some of the moves that the Cowboys made. I believe they franchise tagged Prescott for like $30 million. Prescott obviously wants a large contract. It's rumored that he got offered $35 million annually, and he would be highest paid quarterback. But it's like apparently he turned down $45 million the last year of his contract. So it's gonna be interesting to see if Prescott holds out this year for more money. If he does, then that Andy Dalton signing would actually make a lot more sense. I do believe Andy Dalton is a pretty solid quarterback. Obviously not as good as Prescott, but I do think he'd be able to still win some games for this team, considering they're playing the Redskins and Giants 4 times a year. So obviously the Cowboys drafted CeeDee Lamb. So some of the good things about this pick, his 2019 Oklahoma stats, he had 1,300 receiving yards and only 62 receptions. So that's an average of 21.4 yards per catch. He had 15 touchdowns, one of the best receivers in the 2020 draft, and he fell right into the Cowboys' lap. They prevented the Eagles from drafting a good receiver. He was projected to be drafted around pick 12, and they chose him at pick 17. The bad thing, though, the Cowboys need defense. There's some uncertain pieces in that defense because so many new people have arrived. And they already have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Tavon Austin. So they re-signed Amari Cooper to a 5-year, $100 million deal. He's obviously one of the league's top receivers. They got some new kickers. They signed Greg Zuerlein to a 3-year, $8 million deal, and Kai Forbath as a backup. Now on defense, they bolstered. They got Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe for the defensive line, and they're going to join DeMarcus Lawrence. So it's a pretty solid defensive line right there. Something bad though, Travis Frederick retired. He was an important part of the Cowboys offense, really good center. They will need another offensive lineman to maintain a strong offensive line. They lost a lot of players, though. They lost cornerback Byron Jones. Listen to the Cowboys' starting corners. Trayvon Diggs, Chidobe Awuzie, 2 Randys. I believe one of them got drafted this year, but I think that they're both not veterans, so they're going to need some help at the cornerback position. They lost defensive end Robert Quinn, but they still have a solid defensive line. They got DeMarcus Lawrence, Gerald McCoy, and Dontari Poe, because obviously they lost him, so they got some new pieces on the line. They lost Randall Cobb, Jason Witten, but Blake Jarwin's a pretty good tight end. They lost Malik Collins, and they lost a pretty solid safety in Jeff Heath. So that about sums up all the things that the Cowboys did in the offseason. So let's get into their schedule prediction. So I'm going to go by game, and their schedule should be projected right now. So I believe that week 1, the Cowboys are going to come out flat like they do every single season. So because of the coronavirus, I would be surprised if the Cowboys aren't at a disadvantage. Obviously, they have a new coach in Mike McCarthy and a lot of new pieces on defense. So this team's going to have basically no chemistry and no experience together. So if the coronavirus impacts the length of the offseason, then this team might be at a disadvantage. I believe they will come out slow and lose to the Rams in Los Angeles. I do think that the Dallas Cowboys have a better team than the Los Angeles Rams, but I believe week 1 disadvantage. I believe that the Rams will beat the Cowboys in Los Angeles. So the Cowboys are 0-1. Up next, week 2, they have to play the Atlanta Falcons in Dallas. I believe the Cowboys should beat the Falcons. Obviously, I believe the Falcons are going to have a pretty solid offense this year. Obviously, Matt Ryan. I think they got rid of Todd Gurley, right? But they have a really good offense. They got Mohamed Sanu, Julio Jones, pretty good team over there. I'm always surprised why the Falcons aren't that great. But I believe that the Cowboys will beat the Atlanta Falcons in week 2, and it would be 2-1 or 1-1. Up next, they have to travel to Seattle. I think this is going to be a really big test for the Dallas Cowboys, and I think the Dallas Cowboys will fall short in Seattle. If it was in Dallas, things might be different, but I believe that. Obviously, you saw last year what happened when the Dallas Cowboys played teams with winning records. They obviously fell short, and combine that with a slow start this year, I can't see the Dallas Cowboys beating Seattle in Seattle. So 1-2 for the Dallas Cowboys. Now they have a really easy 4-game stretch. Listen to this 4-game stretch from week 4 to 8. They have to play the Browns in Dallas, the Giants in Dallas, the Cardinals in Dallas, and the Redskins in Washington. That's an easy 4-game stretch. I believe that the Cowboys will win every single one of these games. The Browns, I don't think they're going to be a great team this year. Jarvis Landry, Odell, Baker Mayfield, and Nick Chubb. Those are the highlights of that team. Defensively, who knows if Myles Garrett's going to get suspended. I don't think their defense is strong enough to hold off Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. Cowboys win that game with ease. Next up, the Giants in Dallas. Another easy win for the Cowboys. The Giants aren't the strongest team in the league. It's interesting to see, though, because Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, and Saquon, those receivers and running back might be able to burn this young Dallas Cowboys secondary, but I still think it's the Giants versus Cowboys. The Cowboys are going to win. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals. This is where things get interesting. The Cardinals have a really dynamic offense, but their defense is kind of lacking. All they have is Patrick Peterson and Chandler Jones. But I believe that the Cowboys, this is going to be like their first tough win of the season. I think they'll beat the Arizona Cardinals at home and maintain their record of 4-2. Next up, they have to travel to Washington to play the Redskins. This is going to be their first look at Chase Young, and I think that hopefully they'll find a replacement for Travis Frederick on the offensive line, and I think that they will easily beat the Redskins because the Redskins are not a good team. Cowboys are 5-2 and looking good. And then they have to travel to Philadelphia. So the Eagles made a lot of good offseason moves this year. Obviously, a lot of people overreacted to the Jalen Reagor draft pick, but if you look at his speed and stuff, it could be a really good good pick. It's basically a home run pick. If Jalen Reagor's not good, then somebody's getting fired. But if he is good, then he'll be the next Tyreek Hill. But the Eagles have the best defensive line in the league. They obviously got Javon Hargrave. They have Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham. Best defensive line. They traded D's Nuts for Darius Slay, and they signed him to a $50 million extension. They also added Nicole Roby-Coleman, so they got really good cornerbacks. They also have a really good offensive line. Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Andre Dillard. The only bad thing with this Eagles team is their linebacker core. Just like the Cowboys have a bad cornerback room. The Eagles linebackers, let's see, Nathan Gary, TJ Edwards, and Duke Riley. I think Nathan Gary has some playing experience, but they're all Randys, so that's not really good. I do believe that since it is in Philadelphia, the Eagles will take this victory in the first game of their series. So the Cowboys are 5-3 through 8 weeks. Next up, a really big matchup, the Cowboys versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe that the Cowboys will beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is another big matchup similar to the Cardinals. Luckily for the Cowboys, they play this game at home. I'm not a huge fan of the Steelers' offense this year. I think Ben Roethlisberger might be a little bit washed up. Not washed up, but I think that injury really is going to hurt his career because it's hard to come off of an elbow injury, especially when it's in your throwing arm. So, rip the quarterback for Pittsburgh. Juju's a good wide receiver, but Deontay Johnson, James Washington, and obviously they drafted the guy from Notre Dame, but who knows how he's going to play. And I think James Conner's a little overvalued, I think. He obviously had a larger workload last year because of bad quarterbacks, but I think that Dallas will be able to beat Pittsburgh. I think that it's because the Dallas Cowboy defense will hold off Pittsburgh's offense. If you look at the Pittsburgh defense, they might have one of the best defenses in the league. So it's going to be a low-scoring affair, but I think that the Cowboys will get the job done and be 6-3. Next up, Cowboys to travel to Minnesota. Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. I think the Vikings offense will be strong enough to beat the Dallas Cowboys in Minnesota. If this game was in Dallas, I would have to take another look at things, but I believe that in Minnesota, the Vikings will beat the Cowboys with ease. I don't know. I mean, both of these teams are pretty similar, skill-wise, roster-wise, but I think that the Vikings will win this game. So the Cowboys fall to, 6-4. It looks like 6-4. Decent, I guess. Next up, they play the Washington Redskins in Dallas. I mean, what really is there to say? It's the Redskins, and it's home field advantage for the Cowboys. The Cowboys are going to sweep the Washington Redskins this year. Next up, they have to travel to Baltimore and play the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. The Ravens are a dynamic team. I think this is going to be debatably the best year Lamar Jackson has in his career. He's all set to have a really good year. I think the fact that the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers, have one of the best defenses in the league, I think Lamar Jackson is going to take that personally and really try and step things up this year. I think this is the last year before teams figure him out schematically. So I think that Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, Mark Andrews came out of nowhere. I don't know what he's doing, but one of the best tight ends now. I think that the Baltimore Ravens will beat the Dallas Cowboys in Baltimore, and I think this might be a blowout, and it might be one of those question mark games for the Cowboys where, all right, now they're 7-5. What is this Dallas Cowboys team? Are they going to step up to the task and compete for this division with the Eagles, who might have a similar record at this time? Next up, they have to travel to Cincinnati and play the Bengals. Obviously, the Bengals actually made some decent moves in the offseason. Joe Burrow. I don't mind the pick of T. Higgins, but they have a pretty solid offense now with Joe Mixon, A.J. Green. Their offensive line, though, is kind of bad, so hopefully the guys that they drafted this year are going to make an impact on the offensive line. That's kind of their only hope. I believe the Cowboys will win this game in Cincinnati. I do think it will be closer than many people imagine. I think it'll be the Cowboys win by a touchdown, maybe 10 points. But I do believe the Dallas Cowboys will get the job done. And counting up their wins, we got 3, 6, 8 wins, and so they're 8-5 through 13 weeks. Next up, they have to travel to the San Francisco 49ers, they actually play them at home. It's a home game against the 49ers, but I believe they will lose. I think this is going to be one of the lowest points of their season, where they lose to the San Francisco 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to take a step back this year. I think their offense is going to be marginally worse. I think their defense is going to be elite, though. So I think they're going to have a decent offense and a really good defense, but I think the Cowboys are going to choke this game at home to the 49ers. So the Dallas Cowboys now have a record of 8-6. So the Cowboys are looking at 8-6, and basically with the seven seed playoff format this year, the Cowboys are all right, we're 8-6. If we win 2 games, we will most likely be in the playoffs. If we lose one of these 2 games, it's not looking good. All right, so their final 2 games of the 2020 season is going to be a home game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they already lost to them in Philadelphia. Can the Cowboys clutch up against the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, like I said, I think the Eagles are going to have a really good team in 2020 as long as they stay healthy. But you can't just assume people are going to get injured just because it usually happens. I think that the Eagles are going to be a really good team if they stay healthy. But I think that the Cowboys are going to, find some way to squeak this one out. Maybe they'll pay the referees like they did 2 years ago when the Eagles recovered the fumble on the kickoff and the Cowboys paid the refs to say it wasn't a fumble. So maybe they'll do something like that again. But I think that the Dallas Cowboys will beat the Eagles in Dallas to stay in playoff contention with a record of 9-6. 9-6, the Cowboys have to travel to the New York Giants. So they have to travel to the New York Giants, and this is going to be one of the most intense games that Dak Prescott ever plays. Will he rise up to the test and beat the New York Giants to squeak into the playoffs, or will he fall short? So looking at the Giants' schedule, They have a really tough game, a really tough stretch to get to this game. So the Giants, this is the way that they get to the Cowboys game. They have to travel to Seattle, where they're going to lose to the Seahawks. Then they have to play the Cardinals, then the Browns, then they have to travel to Baltimore to play the Ravens, and then they get to the Cowboys game. So the Giants are probably going to be getting smacked down by those teams I mentioned besides the Browns. I think they'll beat the Browns. But the Seahawks, Cardinals, and Ravens are definitely going to be challenges for this team. So I think the Cowboys are going to get the Giants when they're kind of at a low morale. But I think the Giants are going to have nothing to lose. They're not going to be a great team this year, I don't think. So I think the Cowboys could have a chance at choking this game to the Giants. But it's the New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys, they're definitely going to go all out this game. I think it will be enough to beat the New York Giants. Cowboys 10-6 record. However, I did predict two other teams in the NFC with a 10-6 record that may or may not have won the division. I'm not saying if the Cowboys win their division yet, but if you want to see if 10-6 is enough to get the Dallas Cowboys into the playoffs, make sure to go check out my playoff prediction video where you will see every single playoff team that I predicted based on their records and tiebreakers and stuff like that. So go check that out. Make sure that if you like this video, you comment your team down below so I can let you know when I'm going to predict them. Let me know any advice you guys have, any thoughts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. That's about it. Peace.